we have a public class. We don't need this main method, but we have a method here, and it returns the range of numbers in the given array. To do this, it has two for loops, and it compares all of the numbers to see which is the max difference between the smallest and the greatest numbers, and then it returns that max difference. It is a pretty long code, especially since there's a for loop encased inside of another for loop. If there's an array like this with thousands of numbers, it could take a long time to execute. So now we have to look at ways to modify the code to speed it up. First, we can look inside of our inner for loop to see if there's anything we can do. When we look inside of these for loops, when we look at this one, we have I is equal to 0, and in this one we have j is equal to 0. Each of these is starting at 0, and then it's going to go for the length of numbers. But they don't both need to start at 0. If the outside loop, if I is being compared to j, if they're being compared to the same number, that's inefficient, and it doesn't really make sense to compare them because they're always going to be the same number. So what we can do here is, instead of j is equal to 0, we can do j is equal to I plus 1. So whatever I is, j is going to be that index plus 1. So if numbers I, if the index we're looking at is 1, then numbers j, where the index we're going to be looking at is 2. We're always going to be 1 ahead of the ith index for j. Now we're going to totally change our code. We had this last time, which works but can be improved. Instead of comparing every single one and using the math calls, we are just going to have a single for loop and an if-else statement inside of it that stores the max and minimum value. First, we need to create holders for our max and min values. We're going to say int max is equal to numbers 0. So it starts at the 0th index. And then we can say int min is equal to max when we initialize it. We can start our for loop, which will get the max, or it'll run through the entire array. And then inside of it, we will set our max and min numbers. We're going to have for int x is equal to 1, since we have the 0th index already. And we're going to set it equal to 1, and it's going to be x is less than numbers dot length. And then we're just going to increment it through, so we have x plus plus, and then our brackets. So that is our for loop. Inside of here, we are going to have an if statement. So if the next value in the next index is greater than the current value, we're going to be in our if statement. To do that, we're going to say if numbers x is greater than our current max, we are going to set max is equal to numbers x. And that's going to be our current max value. And if our next number is not greater than our max, we're going to go into our next if statement. And that's going to be if numbers is less than max. If numbers is less than max, that means we need a new min value. And our min value is going to be equal to numbers x. And then we're just going to return max minus min to get the range of numbers in the array, to get the difference of the max and the min value. This code takes up more lines than the previous code. However, since it doesn't have a for loop inside of it and it doesn't use the math classes, it will execute in a shorter fashion.